is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD via Zoom, Silvino da Silva of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts. How are you today, Silvino?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you, Trudy?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, it doesn't matter that much, but usually our DJs remain anonymous while on the air. So, but it's fine. Okay, so first of all, what is your position at the Ruth Page Center for the Arts?
I'm the acting executive director.
Are you also responsible for marketing?
I am, marketing and fundraising.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So how did the Ruth Page Center for the Arts version of Nutcracker come to be produced in Chicago, and where in 1965? Are you familiar with that history?
I am indeed. So our founder, Ruth Page,
Mm-hmm.
Who was a world-renowned ballerina and choreographer in the 20s, 30s, 40s, was from Indiana originally. So after she had her international career around the world, she came back to the Midwest, came to Chicago, where she started working on a variety of different projects, one of which would become the Nutcracker production, presented at the Airy Crown Theater at McCormick Place. She worked in collaboration with Chicago Tribune Charities. So at the time, there was no annual holiday production here in the city. So she, with the Chicago Tribune Charities, began that. And it was one way to use it as a fundraising tool as well. And it was another way to employ all of the various professional dancers in and around Chicago, as well as bringing international stars to Chicago as well.
Is Ruth Page an alumna of Northeastern Illinois University?
No, she is not, but we have a variety of connections to Northeastern. One of our board members is President Emerita Salmi Harju Steinberg. She's been with us for many years, and we've also produced or helped produce the Ruth Page Dance Series in collaboration with the Department of Music and Dance since 1995. So there are many connections to Northeastern.
Do you know how this partnership originated between the Ruth Page Center for the Arts and Northeastern Illinois University?
Yes, sure. It was shortly after Miss Page's passing in '91 that a professor of dance at Northeastern, Venetia Stifler, came to the foundation and wanted to honor Miss Page, and began the dance series using Miss Page's name. So that's how it all began.
And the foundation, are you talking about the NEIU Foundation?
I believe the foundation was also involved, but it went primarily through the Department of Music and Dance.
Okay. What's the Chicago version of Nutcracker based on the Broadway version? How did how when Nutcracker began on the stage, then how did it eventually how did it come to be in Chicago?
There's no connection whatsoever with any other Nutcracker productions.
Mm-hmm.
So what Miss Page created was something completely new and different.
Mm-hmm.
It was her choreography,
Yes.
And it it follows the traditional story of Clara and the Nutcracker and all of the beautiful music that's used. But it was her vision of what the Nutcracker production could be. And so it was all original to her.
Well, then what about other versions then? Do other versions of the Nutcracker derive from the Ruth Page version?
No, not necessarily. The nice thing about the Nutcracker, the original story of the Nutcracker, is that it allows for a lot of interpretation. The music is basically the same in each production. So depending on who's choreographing, they do, variations on a theme. Most of the sections remain the same, or at least the storyline. It begins with Clara and her family, and the gift of a Nutcracker toy, and then there's usually a transformation in the evening, which is kind of a dream sequence, and then you end up in the land of sweets and snow, and that's where you see all the beautiful characters and the beautiful dancing. So all Nutcracker versions basically follow that, but each one is unique to their own choreography.
How has the original version of the Nutcracker changed over the years, the 1965 version until now? And were there any milestones?
So the really wonderful thing about the Airy Crown Theater at McCormick Place was that it's huge. It's huge. So that original production allowed for really grand sets and a lot of wonderful technical things because of the fly space and the wing space. Now, not every theater can accommodate all of that. So one of the major differences between the original version and the version that people will see at Northeastern is it's scaled down because the stage at Northeastern is smaller and the wing space and the fly space is smaller. So we can't bring in those flats that would be behind the dancing. So we modify it with different lighting effects and techniques. It still creates a really beautiful, magical experience, but you don't have the grandeur of that huge stage that McCormick Place has.
Do you have to bring in your own lighting crew, and do they work with NEIU technicians in the lighting booth?
Yes, absolutely. We bring in our tech director, our lighting designer, and we get to work with all of the wonderful people at Northeastern on the tech side. We've been doing the Nutcracker at Northeastern for about almost 10 years now, and it's always a wonderful experience. It really is. The tech crew is great. Everybody works really, really hard. It's a tough production because there are a lot of people involved and a lot of lighting cues and that sort of thing. But it always ends up running really smoothly.
Is it the same version every year, or does it change?
It is the same version every year. The only difference would be who might be a guest performer, for example, in one of the lead roles. So either the Sugar Plum Fairy or the Snow Queen. Those are traditionally the two where we would have a guest artist come in. But otherwise, it's basically the same production.
And you're having so many performers for the play, for the event. The green room isn't that big. How are you able to accommodate everyone?
Well, it's a little bit like a puzzle, but we managed to do so. We use a lot of different rooms, in the arts building. So between the studio and a variety of other classrooms, and even downstairs, we find a way to create different dressing rooms, different areas. Over the years, we've managed to become very creative with how we house the performers, but it all seems to work.
Mhm. This is the 50th anniversary season of the Ruth Page Dance Series. So it's 2021, the 50th anniversary season.
So it's actually the 50th anniversary of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts.
Ah, okay.
Yes, we're actually going 21 and into 22 as our 50th anniversary season.
Mhm. Is Nutcracker a highlight of the 50th anniversary season?
It's one of the highlights, absolutely. Partially because it's been 2 years since we've been able to have a live production. 2019 was the last time we produced and performed at Northeastern. 2020, of course, was the terrible COVID year. We had to cancel those performances. And to be able to be back on stage is really wonderful and so exciting for us. So it's definitely a highlight to be able to bring that production back and perform it for the Northeastern and surrounding community. We're very, very excited. We also have a few other highlights for the 50th anniversary season. We just performed last month in our theater at the Ruth Page Center, a weekend of new choreography, one of which was the reworking of one of Ruth Page's iconic dances from 1932 called Expanding Universe. We had a current choreographer take a look at that original work and come up with a revision and a different look at Miss Page's original choreography. So that was very exciting for us. And it was a work that we commissioned to be performed on the Ruth Page Civic Ballet Training Company. The choreographer was Nejla Yatkin from Chicago. Very wonderful, creative, impressive choreographer. And that was exciting to be able to show this new version of that. We'll be performing that also next year in May at the Ravinia Festival. We'll be kicking off the Ravinia season in May, and we'll be able to share that work along with some other work with the Ravinia audiences.
Did the Expanding Universe ever come to Northeastern Illinois University?
No, it didn't. It was created in 32, and I believe Miss Page took it on the road first to kind of work out the kinks. And then it was performed back in Chicago, I think at Mundelein College. And it may have had a few other places, but unfortunately it didn't make it to Northeastern at that time.
Mm-hmm. When you say work out the kinks, what kind of kinks are there to be worked out?
Well, sometimes it's just production kinks, like how does this dance work in a particular space, a particular theater, and can that be presented the same way in a different theater, for example, that may not have the same capability. So you have to figure out, what's that fine line of what you take and can do in a variety of different theaters. And sometimes it's just to get a sense of the audience. It's a chance for audiences to look at it, and if there's any specific feedback, sometimes choreographers will modify things. It's really a way to take another look at it before it hits the official presentation, where you work out any problems, any issues, anything that seemed like a good idea when you were creating it, but when you see it all together, maybe it didn't work so well and you need to modify it a little bit.
Is there a common denominator? Because there's you say that there are different venues, and then you have to adapt to those venues. Then do you kind of find that common denominator that would be applicable to all the venues, and then go on that?
Yes, absolutely. You would basically set what your minimal technical requirements are. And then when you're looking around for different theaters, or when the theater approaches you because they would like to produce that, then you already have a checklist of what's the minimal things that that are needed. It would be, the stage size could be smaller than this, and you have to have X number of dressing rooms, and the lighting plot and the lighting capabilities all have to have kind of a minimum requirement.
And when you mentioned the official presentation, so you touring around and working out the kinks, then what is considered the official presentation?
So normally for a new work, they would want to bring it to either a theater that they hope would expand the audience. Maybe it's a larger theater, larger capacity theater, or maybe sometimes you want to take it and present it in New York, for example. The idea of presenting a new work on Broadway is a lot different than presenting a new work in a small town in Iowa, for example. So it's basically what the choreographer and artistic team thinks is the best place, the best setting to show the work at its most beautiful, at its most creative.
What is the difference between performing a Ruth Page Center for the Arts production in Chicago versus producing one for Broadway?
What would be the main difference?
Yes.
Sure. Well, we're a not-profit charitable organization. So all of the shows that you see on Broadway are all for-profit. So that's the biggest difference. And there's a lot of things that you can and cannot do, but when you're a nonprofit organization versus a for-profit organization. So that's probably the major difference between what we would do and show.
Oh, but you are able to perform on Broadway, but then anything that you make, it has to go to supporting the organization, the center, and or else being donated. Is that how it works?
You would still, whatever performance revenue or performance fee that you get, would come into the organization. And other than that, there's no real difference with getting a fee here in Chicago, for example, or getting a fee in New York. It all becomes part of the operating budget.
Okay. So, okay, that's interesting. What happened in 1997 that Nutcracker ended performing at the Erie Crown Theater?
Well, there was no one thing, but it happened to be just kind of a perfect storm of events. The Chicago Tribune Charities was changing how it wanted to use their funds a little bit. Their audiences had changed, I guess, somewhat over the years. There were now also other Nutcracker productions that began appearing, around the city and nearby. So the audiences were split a little bit, and it just became, I think, a little overwhelming. We thought, well, we'll give it a break and see in the next few years if we want to produce it again and see what do people miss it, and eventually that's what we what we learned, that people really missed this particular production. While we couldn't perform it in McCormick Place anymore because it was just prohibitively expensive and without a big funding partner like the Chicago Tribune Charities, we had to be creative. And that's where we had the wonderful opportunity to perform at Northeastern, but also in other colleges and universities, around the area. We perform in Grace Lake, at College of Lake County, and a few other places.
The McCormick Theater, is that the same as the Erie Crown Theater, or are they two separate theaters?
It's the same one. So it's the Erie Crown Theater in McCormick Place.
How many practice sessions does the crew and cast have to have before the NEIU Nutcracker opens?
Well, we started rehearsals last month. So in October, we're already rehearsing. Basically in September is when casting would be done, sometimes August, depending. So once we know the roles for the major parts, then the rehearsal schedule goes into effect, and basically every weekend from now until the production, there are rehearsals. There are also rehearsals during the week. It becomes more intense the closer we get to the performance, because that's when our guest artists would arrive from out of town. So we're now working with them, working with the local performers and our kids and stuff. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, a lot of rehearsals.
Mm-hmm. And when you said that the audience missed the Ruth Page version of Nutcracker, when did it revive? When did it come back?
So let's see. We've been at Northeastern for about 10 years. It was probably maybe 2 or 3 years before that, I think, when the Nutcracker was resuscitated and started to be performed in some of the suburban universities and colleges.
Were they mostly in the 12 public universities, or in other colleges as well, in other venues as well, where the Nutcracker was performed?
I think it's probably a mix of different types of colleges and universities.
And most of these venues did have a large enough stage. Actually, our auditorium stage is really not that large, but you were able to work so that to accommodate a nice performance.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes you have to adapt a little bit. You modify choreography a little bit if you don't have enough width, for example, that you would really like, but you have a lot of depth. So you can make some changes and still keep the integrity of the choreography and of the work.
Mm-hmm. It's when the rehearsals at the Northeastern, how do they compare with the rehearsals at the Erie Crown?
Well, we will rehearse here at the center up until a few days before the performance, which would be the same thing whether it was at Northeastern or Erie Crown. So basically, we would go in a few days in advance. The tech crew goes in and sets up the lighting plot, gets everything ready, and we generally have maybe 1 or 2 days of where we can actually rehearse on stage and do run-throughs. And it would be the same thing at the Erie Crown as well as Northeastern.
Oh, so what you're saying is that most of the rehearsals are at the center, at the Ruth Page Center, and then it's only when it goes close to the performance date that you go on site to rehearse at that location.
Exactly, that is exactly true.
From where is Clara cast?
So Clara is actually from the Chicagoland area. This year's Clara is Caroline Cochran. She's 13. She's been one of our students in the ballet training program for many, many years. Beautiful, very talented young lady. And it's always exciting to me to see these, these young performers when they get the chance to play Clara, or they get the chance to be the prince, for example, because it's really meant for, kind of a younger performer. So we're very excited to have Caroline be Clara this year.
How young do the students start the training at the what is the name of the training school again?
So it's the Ruth Page School of Dance.
Yes.
Is our school within the Ruth Page Center for the Arts.
Mm-hmm.
So the training program, we can start them as early as 2, 3, 4. That's our pre-dance program. And then they would move into the training program when they're probably 6 or 7. And the program would go all the way in through high school graduation. Mm-hmm. So we have had many, many kids that started really little, that worked their way through the program. They took on various roles in the Nutcracker production, depending on their age and skill, and could do everything up until like the Snow Queen, for example. One of our students, Lucy Taylor, who is 16 going on 17, will be graduating from high school soon, but she's very, very, very talented, and she actually has the role of Snow Queen, which is normally done by a much older seasoned professional, but Lucy is extraordinary. She's really an extraordinary performer. You would never know that she was that young when you see her on stage. You never would.
And when the students reach about 16 years old, do they have to graduate and move out of the school, or are they could still be students at the school?
So it depends on what that particular young artist wants to do. A lot of them go off to college, whether they stay in dance or they go on to, a different program. There are some that want to be dancers, but would like additional training and additional performance opportunities. And that's where the Ruth Page Civic Ballet Training Company comes in. Mm-hmm. That particular program are for those young dancers, basically from 17 to 22, 23. They would spend a year or 2 years with the company, working with different choreographers, performing in different places. We have relationships with different schools of dance around the world. Basically, we have an international sister schools program. So they would have the opportunity, to go to Spain or to Italy, Cuba, Israel, depending on what's going on. So it's a great program for those young dancers that basically want a gap year or 2 gaps, a 2-year gap between graduating from high school, and if they are going to go off to college, or they may decide after 2 years in the training program that they may not want to go to college right away, and they would rather try to be in a professional company. So we help them, get to that point where they, can make an informed decision on what they really want to do. And we provide as many opportunities as possible for them.
So there are no dancers in that program who could also be college students. Too much of a workload, right?
It's difficult. It is difficult. We have a couple that have been in school while performing. You have to have a lot of dedication and a really strong work ethic, because it's difficult to balance those 2 things. But we do have a couple of young ladies that are in college, but still want to continue training the way they do because they haven't quite decided what they're going to do once they graduate from college. Will they, go into the world of dance, or will they go somewhere else? But in the meantime, they're enjoying both worlds and figuring out which is the path that they really want.
Would you happen to know what those young ladies are majoring in?
Oh gosh. Nope. I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it's interesting just to figure out, like, if they're so deep in dance, then what other field are they interested in? But that's okay. How do the producers decide when to cast the Ruth Page Civic Ballet Training Company's dancers instead of international artists in Nutcracker roles? You did mention Lucy as being very, very talented. Is that how it goes?
So the Civic Ballet Training Program, basically in August or so, is when the director of the school and the program, Victor Alexander, would be making a decision on who would be in the training company. It's by audition, and sometimes it's local dancers. We also have dancers. We have a dancer from Venezuela. We have one from Mexico. So it depends on the year. So he puts the Civic Ballet Training Program together first in August, and then they begin work in September as a company. And then based on that, as we look to the Nutcracker, then he would start deciding if among those young dancers, are there any that have reached the level of expertise and artistry that could take on a particular role in the Nutcracker? So he would start casting that way. And then he looks to the school, and in our advanced program, who in that group and level has the artistry and technique to be able to take on these other roles. And we've been able to, between the Civic Ballet Training Company and the advanced program of the school, cast most roles in the Nutcracker production, which is a big difference from Ruth Page's original version at Airy Crown. Those were all primarily outside dancers, professional dancers that she would bring in from around the world for most of the lead roles. And then some of the secondary roles, and the children, of course, would come from the school. So what's different now is that most of the lead roles are now either members of the Civic Ballet Training Company or an advanced student from our ballet training program, and just a few are guest artists that we bring in.
And the students that are in the training program and in the advanced school, do they have to pay tuition, or or no?
Yes. So the Civic Ballet Training Company is a program of the school, so it is tuition based.
And how many students on average do you have for the school year? Are they separated by grades, or is it like the training company and everybody is together?
No, they're separated by age and level. So normally, in a non-COVID world, we would have 200, 230 students or so. We're currently at, I think, about 125, 150. And as the world tries to become, more normal, and restrictions lessen, I think, young dancers will want to come back, into the studio and begin working again. So it's been very different, this year, and of course last year. We've seen the number of students drop, as all dance schools, all institutions have seen. But I am hopeful that as we move into this next phase, where things are a little more stable, that everybody will want to come back again.
During COVID, how did you adapt the programs in the school?
Well, it was a steep learning curve, for sure. The biggest thing that we had to do was pivot from in-person teaching to online teaching, and learning the technology of that, and being able to schedule online classes is very different than in person. How do we engage students, in an online thing versus when they're in class? It's very different. So that was the biggest challenge, and it took us, a good 3 weeks once the lockdown occurred to figure out a way to utilize the studios, the technology, and reach out to the parents and the students to let them know about these things. And we still have a hybrid of classes, in person and some virtual, although the virtual classes are becoming fewer and fewer as people are more comfortable coming in and having an in-person class.
Are the dancers masked when they're studying in class?
Yes, they are. Yeah, at the center, everybody must be masked, whether you're in class, in a public space, even in our theater, because we have a 218-seat theater and have a variety of theatrical productions. All audiences as well must be masked.
Mm-hmm. How were the instructors able to guide the students on muscular control during the virtual classes? Well,
it's easier with the advanced level students because they already have a different awareness of their body, from the class. It's trickier for sure with the younger students because it really is better in a hands-on setting. We also learned that the very, very little ones, the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, the 4-year-olds, they do not do well in a Zoom class. It's hard to keep their attention, and it becomes different. It's like playtime. They would wander off.
And do you offer scholarships? Are there any programs for deserving students, but that they can't afford the tuition?
Yes, we do. We have scholarships, need-based scholarships, talent scholarships. We also this year announced a brand new scholarship program. It's called the Lauren Anderson Scholarship Program, and it is a program where either a male or female dancer of color would receive tuition for a year, and if they're out of town, housing for a year to work with the Civic Ballet Training Company. Lauren Anderson is an extraordinary woman. She was a prima ballerina in Houston in the early 90s. She was one of the first women of color to break the color barrier in the ballet world before Misty Copeland. And Lauren Anderson was so gracious and so excited to be able to let us use her name for the scholarship program. She will also mentor these young dancers for a year. So she was just here last month for a weekend of master classes, working with the scholarship students. We had a community event where other artists and artistic directors came in, and we had a very casual luncheon, and people got to meet her and talk to her. She's a very important figure in the ballet world, especially as a Black ballerina. When she retired, her point shoes are in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. That's how significant a performer she is.
And how did the Ruth Page Center establish the connection with Lauren Anderson?
It was our school director, Victor Alexander, who had met Lauren a number of years ago at one of the school conventions, I believe it was. And, they formed a nice friendship. And when Victor and I were talking about the different ways to increase opportunities for access to this kind of training, he immediately thought of Lauren and reached out to her, and she responded right away that yes, she would love to be a part of it and would gladly give her name to this and work with the kids. And we have her here a few times a year. It's really extraordinary and much needed. So we're very, very grateful for this program.
When did it start? Did you say that it's new, or the Lauren Anderson Scholarship has been in place for how long?
It's brand new.
Brand new.
Brand new. This is the very first year that we've done this. So we started working on it over the summer, and then by August, we had identified 2 scholarship recipients. One is from Texas, and the other one is from Madison, Wisconsin. And they've been working with the company since September.
What about next year? How could the prospective students for the scholarship apply?
So the best way would be to reach out to our school director, Victor Alexander, and he has a very simple email address. If anybody is interested, it's just victor@ruthpage.org. And so the scholarship is for a year. So again, by July, August, he'll start looking for potential scholarship recipients. So if anybody really is interested, I would reach out to him particularly and let him know.
And Victor is spelled Victor.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. So as a fundraising director for the Ruth Page Center for the Arts, how do you find new donors and funders?
So fundraising is really a lot about relationship building. So between our board of directors and just people that we come across, we try and identify potential donors that way. A lot of times somebody will mention somebody's name and say, oh, I know this person, they're very interested in the arts, or they're very interested in dance, or they're very interested in being able to help with scholarships. So we have basically a running list that we go through and then make contact with a potential funder or donor and hope to establish a relationship with them.
By the way, what is the average tuition, if you could share with us, for a student at the training school,
Ruth Page School of Dance?
Yes, the School of Dance.
So it varies on the number of classes that you take and the level that you're at. So for say, an advanced student who is probably, in class, 4 or 5 days a week, and like the Civic training program, it could run probably $5,000 a year for something like that. The lower level is much less because you're taking fewer classes as well.
Mhm. Okay. Good to know. Can you share with us a disappointing instance where you did not acquire the donor, and what did you learn from the experience?
Well, let's see. I think I learned that old adage not to count your chickens before they're hatched.
Yes.
You may think that that it's not that you haven't established a good relationship, but sometimes you find that what you've asked of a particular donor may not be exactly what they had in mind, or they decide that for whatever reason they really wanted to sponsor something that we didn't necessarily have available, for example. And we never want to just create something just because a potential donor is there. It has to fit our mission, and it has to fit the structure of the center, and does it address one of the programs? So there, I think in the entire time that I've been here, which is 21 years, I think I can only think of two possible times where it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So that's not bad considering 21 years, a couple of instances. So most of the time, the potential funder, donor is in alignment with what you're asking and what you're hoping that they would help us with.
Mm-hmm. And what is the mission of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts? Has it changed at all over the years?
Well, it became officially codified, 21 years ago. The center was very different 21 years ago. So one of the things that we did at that time was establish a mission and codified the programs that we actually have. So our mission is to be a platform for developing great artists and connecting them with audiences and community.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. It covers a lot of ground because we're more than just a building. We're more than just a school of dance. Our other programs, such as our subsidized theater rental program, or our in-resident organization program, or the Ruth Page Dance Series at Northeastern, or the Ruth Page Festival of Dance at Ravinia, are all under the umbrella of this mission.
What is the subsidized theater rental program?
So, producing your own show in a theater can be very expensive. What we do is we basically donate, 50 to 60% of what the production costs would be for somebody who is going to rent the theater for, say, a weekend of performances. So we reduce our fee, our average fee, accordingly. They would make contact with our one of our staff members. It would be our community engagement coordinator, and that's where the process begins. They would see if there's space available for when they wanted to do it. And then we assess whether or not they're, an organization that could benefit from a subsidy, so that they don't pay the full rate for their performances.
Mm-hmm. And also, what theater are you subsidizing? Is there a theater at the School of Dance?
Yes, so the center has its own theater.
I see.
It's the Ruth Page Theater,
Mhm.
218 seats. It's a wonderful kind of black box theater that is adaptable to, dance or a theater production.
Mhm.
Um, the center and this theater has been a home to many theatrical and dance productions that have, or dance organizations that have gone on to, have their own venue. So Looking Glass Theater Company was in residence here for many years before they went on to purchase the Water Tower building and create their own space. Chicago Children's Theater, the same thing. Chicago Shakespeare Theater as well had their home here before they went to Navy Pier. And River North Dance Company, which sadly no longer exists, was here for 20 years or so. So we've had a number of wonderful organizations that have had their start here, and they would be part of the subsidized theater rental program and also an in-resident organization program. So the in-resident, which is slightly different than the subsidized, is we have organizations that either have their offices here and also use the studios and the theater for rehearsals and productions. We have currently 3 dance organizations that are in residence here. It's Hedwig Dances, DanceWorks Chicago, and Giordano Dance Chicago. We have 2 theater companies that are in resident here. One is Porchlight Music Theater, and the other one is Congo Square Theater. And then we have 2 service organizations that are also in residence. One is the Chicago Dance History Project, and the other is Pilates Practice Chicago. So the building is full. It's very full, but it's full with wonderful creativity and opportunities to work together, do different projects, cross promote. It's really a wonderful program.
Cross promote. Is there also cross inspire?
Absolutely, absolutely. The wonderful thing when you have so many different types of organizations here is you can actually, get very inspired by seeing what they're doing in rehearsal or having a chance discussion, in the hallway about an idea. And there's a lot of sharing of creativity, the willingness to be part of a community, supporting one another. Basically, the in-resident organization program, everybody becomes an ambassador for everyone else. And through that, so much wonderful stuff happens.
This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us on Wizard, Mr. Silvino da Silva of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts. So Silvino, how much, first of all, some of the dancers at your school, and since there are so many other dance companies in residence or in other programs at the center, do some of your dancers actually end up performing in those productions? Did that ever happen?
Yes, absolutely. Over the years, it has happened where one of our students, has the opportunity to audition for, one of the other dance companies.
Yes.
It's also happened where, especially for Porchlight Music Theater, because some of their productions, involve a lot of dance. We've been able to have some of our students audition and become part of their production. The very first production that Porchlight Music Theater did here with us was Billy Elliot, which is it's dance focused, and we were able to have a number of our young dancers audition and receive roles in that production. So it does happen. The nice thing about the center is it creates these moments, these opportunities, because everybody shares information and wants to work together. So it's very nice that we can have these things that that some of our dancers hopefully can be a part of.
Does it happen the other way too? What about the performers and other theater companies? Do some of them end up becoming students at the Ruth Page School of Dance?
Well, we have had yes, people from various productions, and we're talking about mostly adults here, because they come to the center and they see that there's a variety of classes for adults as well. So it doesn't matter if you're a want to be a dancer, or you just want to feel better and exercise and move a little bit. We've had lots of people who have, once they've been here, become one of our adult students, either in a beginning ballet class, or they've always wanted to take tap, and they can go into a tap class, or maybe they were a former dancer years and years ago, and they miss just being able to move a little bit. So maybe they come in and they're part of one of the Be Moved classes. So because there are a number of classes for adults, we have luckily had students who cross over, from just exposure to the building and the school.
How difficult is it to meet the fundraising goals of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts?
Well, every year is a challenge depending on what's going on in the world. We are fortunate that we generally have been able to meet fundraising goals. Of course, last year was just horrific for everyone, and that really changed, everyone's budgets and what was available. But it's hard work, because it's not just securing individual donors, it's grant writing and, meeting with foundations and working with state and federal organizations that have grant opportunities. And sometimes those even change. An organization could decide that their focus is going to be slightly different. So you no longer fit the criteria, or an organization decides that they want to focus on something very, very specific. And then we no longer fit that particular criteria. So we're always looking, always adapting, always researching for granting opportunities, as well as the individual donors and funders.
Well, how many times would you say on the average do you have to speak? How long does the relationship usually have to be before a donor would donate, would you say? Or is it very...
Probably the biggest difference between, say, an individual donor and when you apply for a grant is that the individual donor, they can make a decision right away. There could be 1-2 conversations, and they like what you're proposing and they want to be a part of it, and then you receive the funding right away. When you're applying for a grant, that usually comes up one time a year, and it's a process of applying for the grant, and then a review process, and then if you actually secure the grant, then even midway through, you have an opportunity to meet with your program officer and review what's going on. And then there's a final report at the end of that cycle. It takes a much longer time. It's a much more complicated process than when you're working with an individual donor.
So in other words, with a grant, you have to account for the money. Whatever the grant is for, then you have to prove that you spent the money according to what the grant was for.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Let's do a WZRD community assessment with you. WZRD Chicago, being a nonprofit radio station, must be responsible to the community we serve. WZRD is mandated to file quarterly issues with the FCC on non-entertainment community-focused programming. So we like to assess the community for these quarterly issue topics with 3 questions. First, what is most important to you? It doesn't have to do with the center. It's just what is important to you. Silvino da Silva.
For me, well, I guess the greatest issue for me is accessibility to programs. And how does an organization serve a community? And how do they assess what is important to the community so that their programs are relevant?
How does the Ruth Page Center assess the community for what is important to the community?
Well, we fortunately are and have been integrated into the Chicago dance community for over 50 years, and the dance community is a wonderful open group of organizations and people. We have seen over the years, needs change depending on the situation in the world. Space for presentations, space for rehearsals was one of the issues that we observed and knew about many years ago, which is how we then developed the subsidized theater rental program to be able to accommodate for that. We also know that there are so many young artists, young choreographers that may not be, tied to an organization that need support. So some of our arts partners, for example, fill that need. The Chicago Dance Makers Forum, for example, wonderful organization that every year identifies a number of young choreographers across a variety of different genres and provides a grant for them to create and places them within a particular space. So we are very fortunate to be one of the organizations that work with the Chicago Dance Makers Forum. And we have 1 or 2 of these young artists every year rehearse in the theater as they're creating what their work might be at the end of the year. And then we also know that access to quality arts programming is very important. It's very important. So we have some programs that address that as well. We work with the Union League Boys and Girls Club on a variety of projects. The one that I'm particularly proud of is our work in Englewood at the Wentworth Elementary School. We have a dance program there where we audition the children who want to be part of the program. And our coordinator, Alicia Banks, wonderful, talented young woman, oversees the program. And we're there in the school 2 to 3 times a week, working with these kids. And then in the summer, there's also the opportunity for those that want and can to come to the center for basically a 2-week boot camp is what we call it, where these students now get to be in a different environment, and they get to work with different teachers, be part of a different kind of community. And you know, the Englewood neighborhood has so many challenges, and being able to go into Wentworth is very important for us. And our program is mostly about mentoring and providing access and opportunities for those who want to find a way to do whatever they want, you know, outside of their zip code. This year in the Nutcracker, we have 3 of those kids, and the program is called the Keystone Dance Academy, the Ruth Page Keystone Dance Academy. We have 3 of those young dancers they auditioned, and they will be performing in this year's Nutcracker. This is significant because we're talking about children that come late to the world of ballet training, but they excel because they have the desire and the support to be able to do that. So I'm so proud. I'm so proud of these young students, and it's going to be a wonderful experience for them. The last time we performed at Northeastern in 2019, we had 1 of the Keystone Dance Academy kids. So now we have 3, which is very significant in being able to develop these young dancers. And again, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a dancer. You know, they could decide to do something else. You know, we have so many alums from the school that did not end up being a dancer. They're doctors or attorneys or whatever, but they all say the same thing, that the structure of what you learn in a dance program is significant. It's, you learn to socialize, you learn you know, how to follow rules, you know, you learn how to work hard, to think outside the box, you learn how to be nice people. And they all say the same thing, that regardless of what they ended up doing, it was having the opportunity to learn the discipline of dance has helped them in their career, whatever it is.
Might one of the 2 recipients of the Lauren Anderson Scholarship be some of your students from the Keystone Academy?
No, the Keystone Academy, the dancers are in elementary school. So
Okay.
the Lauren Anderson Scholarship dance artists are have to be graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
What about the choreography? Do you offer choreographer classes at the School of Dance as well?
No, that we do not. We just offer dance training.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that there isn't a potential opportunity for, say, a talented dancer who also happens to be, you know, a talented choreographer on their own, but that's a completely different skill. You know, learning to be a choreographer versus being a dancer is very different. But there are some, yes, that have a wonderful vision and a sense of things. And sometimes, you know, if they're talented enough, they could have the opportunity maybe to create a work on, you know, in the summer program, for example, for the end of the summer show, or, you know, a work that maybe the Civic Ballet Training Company could do. So there is the potential opportunity, but our focus is in training the dancer.
Mhm. So evidently that has happened before, where you had a talented dancer that actually did the choreography as well.
Yes, yes, it has happened over the years. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay, let's return to the second and third question of the community assessment. What long-term problem must we address?
Oh, goodness. Well, sadly, because it is a long-term problem, the issue of racism is still prevalent and not easily fixed or addressed. But we need to do something without a doubt. Systemic racism is just prevalent everywhere. And it is, I think, a long-term issue because we've been entrenched in this for hundreds of years.
Mhm. Yes, and we do see that what the work you're doing, that you are trying to address that. And third, what problem must be resolved now?
Oh, gosh, I'd like all the problems to be resolved now. That would be really great. But I think to get to let's say the issue of systemic racism, I believe it begins with conversations and communications and awareness. So I think resolving issues of diversity and inclusiveness and equality help reach the long-term goal of eliminating racism. So I would say that that's probably one of the things to be looked at now, is to have as many people as possible begin this conversation. And it's not just a one-time conversation, it's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing process, it's work, but it needs to be done.
Oh, thank you so much, Silvino da Silva, Executive Director of the Ruth Page Center for the Arts, for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. So much, so appreciative of all your insights about the dance company and also about your work.
Thank you so much. I was happy to be here.
Thank you.